Hey y'all, thank y'all for joining me tonight. Tonight we're actually going to be reading chapters number 12 and 13. I'm sorry, 13 and 14 of the book The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. So like I said, definitely welcome. I know yesterday we actually read 11 and 12. 11 and 12. So like I said, definitely I want to welcome y'all back for another reading tonight. Because I know I'm just now getting off work and just now getting food in the oven. So I'm trying to, of course, get things together for tonight. And I'm like, while this food is cooking, I'll just go ahead and wind down with the book reading tonight. So that's why we're reading tonight, y'all. Because like I said, I've just gotten off work, had a interesting day. Hard day as usual, as being a social worker. So it's no joke, but that's okay. But like I said, definitely, y'all. Let's go ahead and get into chapter number 13. And like I said, definitely, as I always say, make sure that you get you something to drink. Get you something to drink, y'all. And of course, come read with me. So, chapter number 13, The Blue Castle. As y'all know, yesterday, 11 and 12, Valancy was acting a fool. So, like I said, y'all, we're going to see what happens in these two chapters, y'all. I cannot wait. Uncle Benjamin found he had reckoned without his host. Oh. Hold on, let me find my book background. Where's my books at? There we go. It's the one I had yesterday, so I actually like this. So I'm going to keep this one, y'all. So Uncle Benjamin found he had reckoned without his host when he promised so airily to take Valancy to a doctor. Valancy would not go. Valancy laughed in his face. Why on earth should I go see Dr. Marsh? There is nothing the matter with my mind. Though you all think I've suddenly gone crazy. Well, I haven't. I've simply grown tired of living to please other people and have decided to please myself. I know y'all heard that. She has grown tired of pleasing other people and deciding to please herself. Y'all, I know y'all can relate to that. Let me know in the comments, y'all. It will give you something to talk about besides my stealing the raspberry jam. So that's that. And y'all, this Valancy who says she's tired of living for other people, Valancy is 29 years old. And like I said, we're on chapter number 13. But what has happened, she's, like I said, 29 years old. And her family, whoever else, her family mainly, has been running her life. Telling her what to do, what to wear, what church to go to, how to say things, how to look, all the things. What to eat, all the things. This young lady, Valancy, says she is sick and tired of being sick and tired. So she is starting to stand up for herself and talk back and discover her voice. So like I said, that's why I love this story, y'all, because I know we all can relate to this story in some type of way. So let's go ahead and finish reading, y'all. Doss, said Uncle Benjamin, solemnly and hopelessly, you are not like yourself. And thank y'all for tuning in with me tonight, too. I appreciate that, y'all. I appreciate that. Who am I like then? Asked Valancy. Uncle Benjamin was rather posed. Your grandfather wants Bara, he answered desperately. Thanks, Valancy looked pleased. That's a real compliment. I remember Grandfather Wansbara. He was one of the few human beings I have known, almost the only one. Now, it is of no use to scold or entreat or command Uncle Benjamin, or exchange anguished glances with mother and cousin Stickles. I am not going to any doctor. And if you bring any doctor here, I won't see him. So what are you going to do about it? Y'all, she getting smart mouth, y'all. Like I said, I love this. Like I said, she is gaining who she is back and learning to, like I said, step outside of her comfort zone and tell them what she ain't going to do. What, indeed? It was not seemingly or even possible to hail Valancy doctor words to physical force, and in no other way could it be done, seemingly. Her mother's tears and imploring entreaties availed not. Don't worry, mother, said Valancy, lightly but quite respectfully. It isn't likely I'll do anything very terrible, but I mean to have a little fun. Fun? Miss Frederick uttered the word as if Valancy had said she was going to have a little tuberculosis. Olive sent by her mother to see if she had any influence over Valancy, came away with flushed cheeks and angry eyes. She told her mother that nothing could be done with Valancy. After she, Olive, had talked to her, just like a sister, tenderly and wisely, all Valancy had said, narrowing her eyes to mere slits, was, "I don't show my gums when I laugh." Like I said, this book has been quite interesting, y'all. And let me know in the comments if you have been one that has been listening to everybody else besides yourself and you're trying to now gain your voice. Like I said, let me know in the comments, y'all. Back to the story. More as if she were talking to herself than to me. "Indeed, Mother, all the time I was talking to her, she gave me the impression of not really listening. And that wasn't all. When I finally decided that what I was saying had no influence over her, I begged her. When Cecil came next week, not to say anything queer before him, at least. 'Mother, what do you think?' she said. 'I'm sure I can't imagine,' groaned Aunt Wellington, prepared for anything. She said, 'I'd rather like to shock Cecil. His mouth is too red for a man's mother. I can never feel..." Oh, I read it. Hold on. She said, "I'd rather like to shock Cecil. His mouth is too red for a man's. Mother, I can never feel the same to Valancy again." "Her mind is affected, Olive," said Aunt Wellington solemnly. "You must not hold her responsible for what she says." Thank y'all for tuning in, y'all. Let's get back to the story. When Aunt Wellington told Miss Frederick what Valancy had said to Olive, Miss Frederick wanted Valancy to apologize. "You made me apologize to Olive 15 years ago for something I didn't do," said Valancy. "That old apology will do now." Another solemn family conclave was held. They were all there except Cousin Gladys, who had been suffering such tortures of neuritis in her head ever since poor Dawes went queer, that she couldn't undertake any responsibility. They decided, that is, they accepted a fact that was thrust in their faces, that the wisest thing was to leave Valancy alone for a while. Give her her head, as Uncle Benjamin expressed it. Keep a careful eye on her, but let her pretty much alone. The term of watchful waiting had not been invented then. But that was practically the policy Valancy's distracted relatives decided to follow. "We must be guided by developments," said Uncle Benjamin. "It is solemnly easier to scramble eggs than unscramble them. Of course, if she becomes violent." Uncle James consulted Dr. Ambrose March. Dr. Ambrose March approves their decision. He pointed out to irate Uncle James, who would have liked to look Valancy up somewhere out of hand, that Valancy had not as yet really done or said anything that could be construed as proof of lunacy. And without proof, you cannot lock people up in this degenerate age. Nothing that Uncle James had reported seemed very alarming to Dr. Marsh, who put up his hand to conceal a smile several times. But then he himself was not a Sterling, and he knew very little about the old Valancy. Uncle James stalked out and drove back to Deerwood, thinking that Ambrose Marsh wasn't much of a doctor after all, and that Adelaide Sterling might have done better for herself. Y'all, loving chapter 13. Y'all, like I said, Valancy is standing up for herself now. She's 29 years old, have never spoken up until now. Y'all, I'm into chapter 14. I got to get some water first. Like I said, get y'all something to drink, y'all. I got my handy dandy water. So y'all, like I said, get whatever you want to drink. And let me know in the comments, y'all, if y'all have ever stood up for yourself. I'm sure a lot of y'all have, but you have been scared to do so for so many years. And when you did, folks was like, who is this new person? What is she talking about? What is he talking about? Like I said, let me know in the comments, y'all. So I'm sure a lot of y'all can definitely relate. So chapter 14. Life cannot stop because tragedy enters it. Meals must be made ready, though a son dies, and portraits must be repaired, even if your only daughter is going out of her mind. Miss Frederick, in her systematic way, had long ago appointed the second week in June for the repairing of the front porch, the roof of which was sagging dangerously. Roaring Abel had been engaged to do it many moons before, and Roaring Abel promptly appeared on the morning of the first day of the second week and fell to work. Of course he was drunk. Roaring Abel was never anything but drunk. But he was the only in the first stage, which made him talkative and genial. The odor of whiskey on his breath nearly drove Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles wild at dinner. Even Valancy, with all her emancipation, did not like it. But she liked Abel, and she liked his vivid, eloquent talk. After she washed the dinner dishes, she went out and sat on the steps and talked to him. Let's get back into the story, y'all. Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles thought it was a terrible proceeding, but what could they do? Valancy only smiled mockingly at them when they called her in and did not go. It was so easy to defy once you got started. The first step was the only one that really counted. They were both afraid to say anything more to her lest she might make a scene before Roaring Abel, who would spread it all over the country with his own characteristic comments and exaggerations. It was too cold a day, in spite of the June sunshine, for Miss Frederick to sit at the dining room window and listen to what was said. She had to shut the window, and Valancy and Roaring Abel had their talk to themselves. But if Miss Frederick had known what the outcome of the talk would be, she would have prevented it if the porch was never repaired. Valancy sat on the steps, defiant of the chill breeze of this cold June, which had made Isabel ever the seasons were changing. She did not care whether she caught a cold or not. It was delightful to sit there in that cold, beautiful, fragrant world and feel free. She filled her lungs with the clean, loving wind and held out her arms to it. I can feel that now. Let it tear her hair to pieces while she listened to Roaring Abel, who told her his troubles between intervals of hammering gaily in time to his Scotch songs. Valancy liked to hear him. Every stroke of his hammer fell true to the note. There we go. Let's get back into the story, y'all. Old Abel Gay, in spite of his 70 years, was handsome still, in a stately patriarchal manner. His tremendous beard falling down over his blue flannel shirt was still a flaming, untouched red, though his shock of hair was white as snow, and his eyes were a fiery, youthful blue. His enormous reddish-white eyebrows were more like mustaches than eyebrows. He had some thick eyebrows then, goodness gracious. Perhaps this was why he always kept his upper lip scrupulously shaved. His cheeks were red, and his nose ought to have been, but wasn't. It was a fine, upstanding, aquiline nose, such as the noblest Roman of them all might have rejoiced in. Abel was 6'2" in his stockings, broad-shouldered, lean-hipped. In his youth, he had been a famous lover, finding all women too charming to bind himself to one. His years had been a wild, colorful panorama of follies and adventures, gallantries, fortunes, and misfortunes. He had been 45 before he married, a pretty slip of a girl whom his goings-on killed in a few years. Abel was piously drunk at her funeral and insisted on repeating the 55th chapter of Isaiah. Abel knew most of the Bible and all the Psalms by heart. Oh, goodness, y'all. While the minister whom he disliked prayed or tried to pray. Thereafter, his house was run by an untidy old cousin who cooked his meals and kept things going after a fashion. In this uncompromising environment, little Cecilia Gay had grown up. Valancy had known Sissy Gay fairly well in the democracy of the public school, though Sissy had been 3 years younger than she. After they left school, their paths diverged, and she had seen nothing of her. Old Abel was a Presbyterian. That is, he got a Presbyterian preacher to marry him, baptize his children, and bury his wife. And he knew more about Presbyterian theology than most ministers, which made him a terror in their arguments. But Roaring Abel never went to church. Every Presbyterian minister who had been in Deerwood had tried his hand once at reforming Abel, but he had not been pestered of late. Reverend Mr. Bentley had been in Deerwood for 8 years, but he had not sought out Roaring Abel since the first 3 months of his pastorate. He called on Roaring Abel then and found him in the theological stage of drunkenness, which always followed the sentimental maudlin one, and preceded the roaring blasphemous, I can't read y'all today. Lord, what is going on? Blasphemous one. Oh my God. The eloquently prayerful one, in which he realized himself temporarily and intensely as a sinner in the hands of an angry God, was the final one. Abel never went beyond it. He generally fell asleep on his knees and awakened sober, but he had never been dead drunk in his life. He told Mr. Bentley that he was a sound Presbyterian and sure of his election. He had no sins that he knew of to repent of. Had you never done anything in your life that you are sorry for? Asked Mr. Bentley. Roaring Abel scratched his bushy white head and pretended to reflect. Well, yes, he said finally. There were some women I might have kissed and didn't. I've always been sorry for that. Mr. Bentley went out and went home. Abel had seen that Sissy was properly baptized, jovial, drunk at the same time himself. He made her go to church and Sunday school regularly. The church people took her up, and she was in turn a member of the mission band, the Girls Guild, and the Young Women's Missionary Society. She was a faithful, unobtrusive, sincere little worker. Everybody liked Sissy Gay and was sorry for her. She was so modest and sensitive and pretty in that delicate, elusive fashion of beauty which fades so quickly if life is not kept in it by love and tenderness. But then liking and pity did not prevent them from tearing her into pieces, like hungry cats when the catastrophe came. 4 years previously, Sissy Gay had gone up to Muskoka Hotel as a summer waitress. And when she came back in the fall, she was a changed creature. She hid herself away and went nowhere. Wow. The reason soon leaked out and scandal raged her. That winter, Sissy's baby was born. Nobody ever knew who the father was. Cicely kept her poor pale lips tightly locked on her sorry secret. Nobody dared ask Roaring Abel any questions about it. Rumor and surmise laid the guilt at Barney Snaith's door because diligent inquiry among the other maids at the hotel revealed the fact that nobody there had even seen Sissy Gay with the fellow. She had kept to herself, they said, rather resentfully. Too good for our dances, and now look. The baby had lived for a year. After death, Sissy faded away. 2 years ago, Dr. Marsh had given her only 6 months to live. Wow. Her lungs were hopelessly diseased, but she was still alive. Nobody went to see her. Women would not go to Roaring Abel's house. Mr. Bentley had gone once when he knew Abel was away, but the dreadful creature was scrubbing the kitchen floor, told him Sissy wouldn't see anyone. The old cousin had died, and Roaring Abel, come on, Fly, had had 2 or 3 disreputable housekeepers, the only kind who could be prevailed on to go to a house where a girl was dying of consumption. But the last one had left, and Roaring Abel had now no one to wait on Sissy and do for him. This was the burden of his plaint to Valancy, and he condemned the hypocrites of Deerwood and its surrounding communities with some rich, meaty oaths that happened to reach Cousin Stickles' ears as she passed through the hall and nearly finished the poor lady. Was Valancy listening to that? Valancy hardly noticed the profanity. Her attention was focused on the horrible thought of poor, unhappy, disgraced little Sissy Gay, ill and helpless in that forlorn old house out on the Mistawis Road, without a soul to help or comfort her. Wow, very, very lonely. My goodness. And this is this in a nominally Christian community in the year of grace 19 and some odd. Do you say to that sissy is all alone there now with nobody to do anything for her? Nobody. Excuse me. Oh, she can move about a bit and get a bite and sup when she wants. But she can't work. It's hard for a man to work all day and go home at night tired and hungry and cook his own meals. Sometimes I'm sorry I kicked old Rachel Edwards out. Abel described Rachel picturesquely. Her face looked as if it wore out 100 bodies. And she talked about temper. Temper is nothing to mopping. She was too slow to catch worms and dirty. Oh, I guess he was stuttering, I guess. I ain't unreasonable. I know a man has to eat his peck before he dies. But she went over the limit. What do you suppose I saw that lady do? She made some pumpkin jam, had it on the table in glass jars with tops off. The dog got up on the table and struck his paw into one of them. What did she do? She just took hold of the dog and wrung the syrup off his paw and back into the jar. Oh, that's nasty. Lord, the dog done touched the syrup and jam, you putting it back into the jar? Lord. Then screwed the top on it and set it in the pantry. I said, open the door and says to her, go. The dame went and I fired the jars of pumpkin at her, 2 at a time. Though I thought I died laughing to see old Rachel run with them pumpkin jars raining on her after her. She told everywhere I'm crazy so nobody will come to look for love or money. But Sissy must have someone to look after her, insisted Valancy, whose mind was centered on this aspect of the case. She did not care whether Roaring Abel had anyone to cook for him or not, but her heart was wrung for Cecilia Gay. Oh, she gets on. Barney Snapes always drops in when he's passing and does anything she wants done. Brings her oranges and flowers and things. There's a Christian for you. Yet that sanctimonious, sniveling parcel of St. Andrew's people wouldn't be seen on that same side of the road with him. Their dogs will go to heaven before they do. Wow. And their minister, slick as if the cat had licked him. There are plenty of good people, both in St. Andrew and St. George's, who would be kind to Sissy if you would behave yourself, said Valancy severely. They're afraid to go near your place. Because I'm such a sad old dog, but I don't bite. Never been anyone in my life. A few loose words spilled out around. Don't hurt anyone. And I'm not asking people to come. Don't want them poking and prying about. What I want is a housekeeper. If I shaved every Sunday and went to church, I'd get all the housekeepers I want. I'd be respectable then. But what's the use of going to church when it's settled by predestination? Tell me that, miss. Is it? Said Valancy. Interesting conversation, y'all, I must say. Very interesting conversation. So let's go ahead and get back into the story, y'all. Is it? Said Valancy. Yes, can't get around it nohow. Wish I could. I don't want either heaven or hell for steady, when a man could have them mixed in with equal proportions. Isn't that the way it is in this world? Said Valancy thoughtfully. But rather if her thought was concerned with something else than theology. No, boomed Abel, striking a tremendous blow on a stubborn nail. There's too much hell here. Entirely too much hell. That's why I get drunk so often. It sets you free for a little while. Free from yourself. Yes, by God, free from predestination. Ever try it? No, I have another way of getting free, said Valancy absently. But about Sissy now. She must have someone to look after her. What are you harping on Sis for? Seems to me you ain't bothered much about her until now. You never even come to see her. and she used to like you so well. I should have said Valancy, but never mind. You couldn't understand. The point is you must have a housekeeper. Where am I to get one? I can pay decent wages if I could get a woman. Do you think I like old hags? Well, I do, said Valancy. So yeah, like I said, this was an interesting chapter as well. It's getting more into Valancy, of course, talking to the man that nobody in this whole town wants to talk to, Abel. And he's like one of the folks in the neighborhood or in the community who, of course, fixes things, who is, like I said, fixes things for people and that kind of thing, but nobody wants to mess with him. He doesn't want anybody at his house. And like I said, she's the only one out there talking to him, trying to get to know him, of course. And then, of course, asking about his, I guess, his baby mama, I guess, Sissy. So like I said, definitely a very interesting chapter, y'all. And this ending right here, it says, with Valancy saying, will I do? So like I said, definitely, I'm just really ready to hear chapter number, like I said, 14. Or actually, this is chapter number 15, y'all. Lord, chapter number 15 and on to see how this goes, y'all. Because I definitely want to know. Like I said, this has been an interesting story so far. I hope that y'all have been getting something out of the story too. Like I said, let me know in the comments, y'all. Have y'all ever been in a situation like this where you're finally speaking up for yourself after years of having your voice suppressed? Like I said, let me know, y'all. And I'm going to go ahead and get off here because I got food cooking too, so at the same time. So I just want to thank y'all for tuning in. Like I said, join me next week, next Tuesday, for another reading of the book, The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. And like I said, I hope y'all have been enjoying so far and able to follow along in the story as well. I hope so, I hope so, I hope so. And if